Welcome to Rose Yoga, Tapping into Heart Courage. I'm Varishka Normando, Healing Arts Coach. And today I want to welcome an amazing friend, artist, healer, thought leader, earth lover, Foa. And Foa, I'd like to welcome you. And if you wouldn't mind sharing a bit about the magic that you're inspired to share in the world as the incredible, inspiring sprite that you are. I know that Foa is an exceptional Feldenkrais worker, body worker. She's a dream analyst, or at least plays with dream interpretation, and a one-of-a-kind musical recording artist. And I'm very inspired to be sharing with her, and you will be hearing some of the music later, and we'll be offering links to get in touch at the end of our podcast. So welcome, Foa. I'd love to hear about the magic that you're inspired to make in the world right now and where you're at in these times.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Frishka, for having me. Yeah, I'm Foa. My pronouns are they, she. Yeah, the magic that I'm following. It's really like always around, isn't it? It's just like learning how to see it more. So for me, the deepest and most abiding muses have been nature, and including human nature, and the dream world, specifically the dreams that find us when we sleep. So I'm also a permaculture designer, and I've been really, particularly lately, been really interested in this permaculture design concept that's not unique to permaculture design, because I think it exists in indigenous cultures and thought as well, but this idea of stacking functions and creating a closed loop system. So in my own work as an artist and somatic educator and dream worker, finding ways where all of those feed into each other. I was thinking about my brother and I recorded last June, and one of the design questions that I brought in with me was does this please the clit of the song? Like, is this stroking the clit right? You know, like, how is this linking up with pleasure? But like linking that back to somatics around sensation and being interoception, of being really like tuned into sensation and what it is that we're feeling, versus trying to curate what it is that we're feeling, actually feeling what is true. And similarly with dreams, you know, it's so easy to want to go into a dream and be like, this means that, snakes mean that, fire means that, you know, and really it's so unique to each person and whatever time a person is in that particular moment in their life. So damn, I lost my thread. Yeah, so like allowing what is true in the dream to emerge, and from those two places of sensation and mystical language and communication, so much of my art is formed, particularly musically. Like, how does it feel in my body to sing or to tonify in a particular way? Where is the sound coming from? How am I standing while I'm singing? You know, how am I organizing myself? And then is there an intersection with that and something that creates a sort of pang in my heart that taps into that sort of dream language? That's really what I'm most interested in, occupying that space, because it's centering and it feels like it keeps me in a place of authentic service. And my hope is in the work, and all the work is to support sensation, to support people being able to feel themselves. That cultivates a certain amount of empathy, that mobilizes folks and resources folks into action, into whatever action is in their heart to do, that reaches beyond just the walls of their own being. I really believe that that's super important in these times, is finding that sweet spot of like feeling our individuality, but moving into the group field, into the group work as well. Because I think that that's where so much healing is needing to happen, in the spaces where we can feel our collective power. So long-winded answer, but that's what's really moving me right now as a human and as an artist. And how can I be a part of that in a good way, and purify my need to be liked, my sort of the ways that my wounding in that way, or my insecurity keeps me from being of service with all of these things that I care about, because I think I'm afraid it's going to be bad, or no one's going to listen to it, or, you know, it's not quite right for whatever reason. Yeah. So in that sense, I think the last thing I would say is that's the medicine in the artwork, is the ways that it can mirror back our own growing edges, and where we can continue to grow, you know.
Yeah, there's a lot of profound terrain that you're bringing up and covering, that's bringing up a lot more questions for me. One of them is, how do you relate to being like a dream interpreter and paying attention to your dreams versus what you consider reality, and how you're interpreting reality? Like, does that collide? Does that compare?
Oh yeah.
That you reflect on your day and think about, what did that mean, or what it's like? Could you maybe compare these things? It's just coming through right now.
Yeah, no, I love that question, and I hope I'm hearing you right. Feel free to chime in if I'm not. Yeah, I mean, the lineage of dream work that I've been studying with my mentor Matt Cochran for the past, since I was 26, I'm 37, so 11 years, is called dream tracking, which I love because I feel like it rewilds the territory of dreams, not from something that's in some sort of like encyclopedia or like book of analysis, but as like an actual wild country that is like a map for each person, that is unique to each person, that we learn how to track the prints that are on that territory, that are moving through that territory. So it's like stalking an animal. And so I want to start off saying that, but all that to say, something that I've learned from Matt over the years is how like the dream world and the day world are constantly weaving in and out of one another. And in certain ways, sometimes the dream world is more real because there's a certain domesticity that exists in the day world that filters the visceral truth of wild nature, that dreams are wild. And that's something that I write about when I'm on my website recently, when I was sort of rewriting it and trying to explain what it is that I feel and mean about it. But for a lot of us who live in urban spaces or suburban spaces where the wild has been really pushed out, dreams might be the only wild place that we have access to. And that can come up in contexts like you have sex with your dad in your dream, you know, like, or you kill someone in your dream, or you do something that's just really doesn't feel good or terrifies you. You know, these are qualities of nature that as a species we've really tried to corral away. And so that's one thing I'll say. And then yes, there's certainly are times where I'm trying to think of like recently where it's not just like you see something in the day world while you're awake, quote unquote, and then you dream about it. And people kind of use that as an excuse to be like, oh, dreams are just like, it's just psychological off-gassing. And, you watch something on a television show and then you dream about it. Like that certainly happens. I don't think it's a good enough reason to rule out the presence and the validity of dreams, but it's really fun when you dream about something and then you see it in the waking world, in your waking time, or in the day world. And I really look for those communications. And I try as best as I can to not make it mean something that I want it to mean, but instead engage with it like a conversation where I let the dream live, as I've learned in this lineage of dream work, that it's a relationship. I think that that's such a valuable template to use to orient oneself in dream work, is to view it as a conversation and a relationship versus something that's static and 2D and something that we directly translate into symbolic meaning, because that takes us on a journey of like temperature, of like emotional arcs, of more of a living story.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's I think what I'd say about that. Does that answer your question?
Um, Not really, but it was a beautiful reflection, all in all.
So like what could
Which,
you ask the question again?
well, let me just add while we're on the topic of dreams, I guess what it brings up for me and my kind of background of interpretation is just like, isn't it important how you feel in the dream? Like, say, in the dream, in that situation, you're really
Yeah.
scared or you're really happy. But later, when you think about the dream in itself, you see all this other symbolism, but then you remember, but this is how I felt about it. So, how important is how you're feeling about the thing? Is
Oh,
that outweigh everything that you can otherwise like make turn into metaphorically other meanings?
mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that it's a nexus. It's like a network of different, there are different layers. So yes, how you feel is incredibly important. Where it's happening, like place, is just as important of a character or presence in the dream as how you're feeling. What is your memory of that place? What is your association with that place? um what is this character of place? um and how you feel specifically in the dream versus how you feel upon waking and reflecting about what transpired. So with working with people, I try to walk them with them back into the dream. So we use language that is present tense. We don't talk about it as if it had already happened. We talk about it as if it's happening right now. And that helps folks to re-enter into the sensation that either they're having somatically, physically, or emotionally. But yes, how you're feeling about whatever it is really important.
Is that almost the key feeling toward the symbol of the dream?
What do you mean? The key
Like
feeling toward?
like how you're feeling about it, even though you might have questions.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that how you're feeling about it and having questions, like, I think it's really important. I think if you leave a dream and you don't have any questions, like, I question that. Hopefully you leave with more questions,
Yeah.
because that's how the dream stays alive.
Mm-hmm.
When we feel like we have it figured out, it's done, and that's not really how nature works. It's more of an organic process. So
Mm-hmm.
maintaining our curiosity and maintaining connection to sensation of what the dream is feeling through us is really important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess my question is how you relate to this reality in a sense, like the waking dream, do you feel like you have the opportunity to morph what is happening or reassess? And maybe you did answer it in your own way, but I guess I'm wondering more your approach to actively seeing this reality as a dream of some sort.
Yeah.
Space.
Yeah, it's such a big question. I kind of feel like answering it with a dream that I had recently.
No way.
Is that okay?
Yeah. I love it.
Yeah. Because dreams are confusing and they're riddles, and I feel like life is confusing and it's a riddle, and it's okay to be lost in it. It's like something I've been thinking about a lot lately is because I have this like really chronic ambition of just like feeling like I need to be doing shit. I need to be doing shit really well. And if I don't, I'm failing. And that usurps my ability to engage in the process in a way that actually is where I think creation emerges from and connection emerges from. So, yeah, like how does my dream world, how do I experience being in the waking dream? I had a dream, and it's the first time I've had a lot of dreams where I almost die. And I wake up before that happens. And a few weeks ago, I had a dream. And I say this like folks who are listening to hold this sacredly, because it's important to, hold sacred when people share their dreams. It's sacred knowledge. I was a man inside a space pod. And there was like a mothership nearby, and I realized in the pod as an astronaut that I was going to need to sort of self-detonate the pod. Let me speak in present tense. I need to detonate the pod in order to secure the wellness and the safety of everyone who's in the main mothership. And I'm communicating with a person who is operating, is master of operation at the command central in the mothership pod. And we're sort of having this really intimate exchange of knowing that I'm going to die in the next 5 minutes. And it's the right thing to do, and there's nothing that can be done. And I look in behind me in this pod, and there's a couch with an Afghan blanket that my great-grandmother, Foa, my great-grandmother, made. And it's laying there. And the astronaut becomes my father. So I'm the astronaut becoming my father. And as my father, I grab this great grandmother blanket, Afghan, and wrap it around me. And the pod explodes and I die. And I'm hurling through this black sort of vortex hole, and I'm just accepting it. And then I arrive in this black pool of water, and I can't see anything. And I'm like, oh, this is the waiting place. Like, this is the infinite sea where everything comes from and everything returns to. And it's not that bad. It's okay. It's okay to disappear. And then I wake up. And the way that dream has brought me into my waking life in a new way has been incredibly profound. Working that dream with my mentor and exploring all the different moments where I can let myself surrender and die to the moment. That it's not something that I need to resist. Is an incredibly important resource as an artist and as a human. And I mean, I could go on and on about that. I feel like the humility that emerges from that, the recognition of the sanctity and the fucking mystery of what are we doing here? Like, what is this green, blue earth? The gratitude and honestly, like the relaxation into pain and not running away, but moving towards it. as it's being a part of being alive. All of those things were medicine from the dream that live with me now when I'm quote unquote awake in this daytime world. So yeah, I feel it all the time, but that's just one example.
It's really powerful. Thank you. It reminds me of one of my dreams.
Oh yeah, tell
Like
us.
30 years ago. I want to keep it brief, but basically I was on a mountaintop and well, I'm already feeling just very vulnerable. Listening and during our speaking, I've had the verge of tears, just like the beauty and the fragility of reality that we're speaking about that is ultimately such mystery, you know, talking about art and beauty and creativity and service and you know, it's just this mandala. But yeah, as a reflection, I'm at this mountaintop and there's this teacher and there's this puddle of water and I have to like go to my knees and as reverence, show reverence to the teacher by placing my face into the water. And I really didn't want to because it was a puddle. It wasn't like a beautiful, clear stream, you know? And so I was like, okay, I'm going to do this. And was like, you know, pulling my breath and like just the face, like the moment my face just inserted into the puddle, it's like that astrology imagery that my face just pushed into the cosmos. And my face just entered the cosmos and I was in infinity. And yeah, it was, I'll never forget it. You know, it was just that moment. But you know, from the resistance to, oh, okay, I'll surrender for this one moment.
Wow. If that dream, if you were to give that dream a name, a title, what would you name it?
Maybe infinity or break on through to the other side.
It certainly is an unlikely door.
Yeah. And you know, it kind of came out of nowhere. Like you're saying, it's amazing when you get those dreams without having seen that movie or, you know, whatever reference point. Yeah. So another thing that you mentioned, we've got about 5 minutes here.
Okay. Oh wow, I really rambled on there, didn't I? Sorry.
No, nothing to be sorry about. We'll just have to have part 2 and 3. But I mean, honestly, you know, maybe we could just speak about dreams
Yeah,
the entire time. But my point is you did reflect on like what your service is, you know, like that drive in nature to serve, you know, with all these modalities that you've chosen, that you've been a student of, that you also feel the drive to share. Do you feel like, is that innately your identification to serve humanity in that way? Like, I'm going to try to pose the question in a clearer way. Like, us doing our personal work versus the collective work, you know, how it is the micro macro.
Yeah.
What is your relationship to that you do refer to it as like a service?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
is it a service or a calling or your career? You know, it's just, and I just like to hear from different individuals what their relationship is
to service and calling or vocation.
Because I noticed you related it to as a service.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the sort of being in mid-process struggle that I'm having right now, is trying to find my way into, I feel like I have a lot to give, and finding a way to give it seems difficult. Because the nature of the work that I do, you know, like the Feldenkrais method is not sexy. It does not make you toned. It does not like make you look hot in a bathing suit. It doesn't like move your prana, you know, no offense to yogic practitioners. It's just not, it doesn't equate to a sort of externalized vitality. That like, I dig yoga. I'm a yoga instructor. I'm not like hating on that, but I think I'm just frustrated because I feel like the Feldenkrais method is so radically supportive to being a human being on this earth. It's slow, it's attentive, it grows our capacity to feel and to listen, and that translates. So I'm having a hard time getting it to people who, it can be of service to them, because I'm having a hard time convincing people that, it's valuable. So I don't know how to answer that question. I'm really trying to figure out how can I be the flower that people want to come and smell. How can I like be a pollinator, supporter? And yeah, I'm very clear on what it is that my service is. What is not clear is like, is it actually being of service? Because I feel like I'm in a sort of an echo chamber of myself doing this work, trying to use the internet to reach people, and it doesn't seem to be working very well. So
I hear you.
yeah.
I can really resonate with that pollinator energy. So
Mhm.
what do you feel like, how do you distinguish doing the inner work versus how am I actually helping the collective right now? How do
Right.
I transmute or move this collective pain? How do I honor it? How do I help shape shift it?
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting that's coming up for me as we have a conversation about this is sort of the way that I think many of us have been brainwashed to think that service has to look really big. It has to be really big. And I think of all the small creatures that contribute to the ecology silently while we're sleeping, while we're not even looking, and we don't realize that they're supporting our life. So I think that there's a spectrum of service. There's a way of being of service that doesn't have to be equated with celebrity or visibility. Um, and so an example would be like in a intimate relationship, family, romantic, whatever, the capacity that is grown, the wisdom that is grown in any of these modalities or techniques that I learn. Ooh, I see our countdown here. Can translate into just a quality of presence and being with that person, being able to be with that person in some way that is more attuned and carries deeper capacity for being with them. That's a service. I think that the question that I'm really holding right now as a white person is, how do I participate in the social justice conversation with my skills? Without sort of bringing in white saviorism, without bringing in white savior complexes that aren't supportive. How can this turn into like civic healing? How can this turn into people in the inner city like getting food and being freed of being in a food desert? And I think that we have so much inundation of so much of the wounding that we're waking up to, that it's really difficult to know how to focus and like pick the path that is ours to choose, that brings us alive, that is also translates into nourishment for these, all of these needs and all of this pain that needs love and loving kindness. So yeah, I'm still living the question and trying to find my way into how can I be of service, and also recognizing the smaller ways also count, and just staying humble and staying attuned to continuing to practice to do the work, and challenging myself to not leave it just in the walls of my own being.
I appreciate your response in there. And as we wrap things up, I'm curious, I'm a question asker. For me, there's always another question. And I also really appreciate, in light of that, we are being inundated with so many world problems on the full spectrum, whether it's the planet or social or political. our innate freedom, all of these things that we are struggling with, if we can't even stand up for ourselves, how it's harder to even be standing up for others when we don't even feel privileged. Our
Mm,
flowers aren't being smelt, there's no place to put them, they might be wilting.
mhm,
um,
mhm,
then how do you live in the answer? Like if you had to say right now in closing,
mhm,
you know I'm choosing to live in the answer. What is like the immediate answer for you right now?
mhm. I feel like I don't know. I feel like living the question is the answer. It's I
Good
don't
one. Good
yeah, I don't know if
one.
I believe in the answer. I don't like a part of me wants there to be an answer so badly. It's like, wanting to return to the womb, wanting to not feel separate from the divine, like I want an answer, but I don't think that that's it, at least not for me. I think that the questions lead to the next question, leads to the next service, leads to the next process, the next person, the next sensation. And that it's sort of, you know, it's more circuitous.
I hear you. What do you think that is something you feel like you might have to let go of in
Mm.
order to make more space for the next question?
Mm. I love that little sleight of hand you just did. Um, I think that there's something about being like courage of like continually choosing to return to stepping out and being seen. Um, that it isn't about like celebrity visibility, it's something else. It's like that quote that I was sharing with you, that Gary Snyder quote of being famous within 5 miles. There's something about contributing to the ecosystem in which I live and continuing to return to that practice and delight in that discipline is something that um, I want to make space for. And I think I'm not quite sure what's maybe occupying space that could um, be dusted off or rearranged in order to stay attuned to that. I'll sit with it. Thank you
Any
for the
kind of
question.
resistance or resignation or
Hmm.
old self-doubt?
Yeah, probably self-doubt. I think being disabled, there's a way that my internalized ableism makes me feel like I don't have anything to give, that I'm not functional enough to have offer something of meaning, which really is kind of like a way of being self-concerned that feels very indicative of the sort of like narcissistic thread that lives in our time. Maybe it's not like this inflated sense of myself, it's a
Right.
deflated sense of myself that isn't all mine. I think the patriarchy has something to do with it too, but there's a way that I can tend that and protect myself from that,
Mhm.
that I could yeah, that comes up for me in response to your question.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I mean, it's like that self-deprecation is like the underbelly of the false pride or motivation, and
Mm-hmm.
definitely a sign of times of our culture. But I really do love that you brought up the part of, really just Mr. Rogers, how are you treating your neighbor? How are you showing up, within your vicinity? Because that's how people are going to remember you, who you are up close and personal.
Mm-hmm.
And that there isn't really anything to prove. But from where I sit, I really, really want to hear your voice more and what you have to share. And I feel like I have so much to learn from your insights. And um, I'm just encouraging you to share your voice more. And if it's through singing or sharing your wisdom, I'm waiting, and this is my invitation. I feel very honored to hear your insights and your perspective. And the world needs you now. I don't plan to say that. I'm not trying to be a cheerleader, but with my sincerity. So thank you, Foa, and
Thank
I'll leave links to
you so
reach
much.
out for people. You're also going to be offering some online movement classes for Feldenkrais so that you can assist over Zoom and with dream work. I like the weaving and the tracking, the dream tracking.
Yeah.
And thank you so much for chatting with me today.
Thank you
You
so
are
much.
very courageous in my
As are you, courageous lion, Leo.
Thank you, my Sag sis. Well, big aloha, and I hope to talk to you again soon.
Yeah, same. All
Okay,
right.
bye.
Bye.